Apple decided to release their thin phone after this one, the iPhone Air. It's thinner than the Samsung S25 Edge, but at the same time, that's the downside to the iPhone Air. For the extra thickness Samsung added, we get 152 more megapixels and a larger sensor size, a smaller lower megapixel front camera, a SIM tray, speaker on the bottom, extra rear camera, 751 milliamps of extra battery, and more, all for most of the times a cheaper price. So let's talk about the fairly thin Samsung S25 Edge. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and Samsung and Apple both aren't great at naming because the iPhone Air isn't made of air and the Samsung S25 Edge isn't an Edge phone. Either way, let's get started. Now there's two things to bring up when we talk about this phone. The obvious is the design being very thin. The other, of course, is to compare this to the iPhone Air. Like I already talked about, this is clearly the better option. What I don't like about either of them are the size. This is a tall and wide phone similar to the Samsung S25 Ultra, ironically the same main camera. This 6.23-inch tall phone is taller than the iPhone Air, which may be good for some. Starting with the front, we have the small bezeled phone, then we have a slit at the top for the earpiece, very difficult to even see, as well as the hole punch for the front camera, and near the bottom is the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, which both work great, and when Face Unlock isn't working, I rely on the fingerprint scanner. I'm personally surprised that it's working great, but maybe it's because I don't have a screen protector on here. Something you realize is that unlike the S25 Ultra, this is like the other S25s as it does not have the anti-reflective coating, something the Air kind of has. This is a 6.7-inch 1440p OLED panel that runs at 120 Hz, giving us a spectacular 513 pixels per inch. Yes, the phone with the battery smaller than the S25 has a 1440p 120Hz display and gets pretty bright at about 750 nits in manual mode, while peak brightness is 2600 nits in direct sunlight. As expected, content viewing is a treat. While the image on the Air looks great, I am so glad that Samsung didn't try to just ruin this phone in hopes of making the battery great. Having double tap to wake, sleep, and the always on display on a Samsung phone is always a treat, so another win over the Air. Moving to the frame, we have the matte titanium frame, another win, with the top having two holes for the top microphone, and the left side has the 5G ultra-wideband antenna, if applicable, while the right side has the power and volume buttons. On the bottom, we get another loudspeaker and a SIM tray, something Apple can never do apparently. The speaker actually sounds pretty great, especially since it is a stereo setup. There's another hole for the microphone as well as a USB-C 3.2 port that allows for 5 gigabits transfer speed. Then on the back, we have the floating looking camera double bump island, which has a glass lens covering that metal and what looks like a camera flash with more glass that sits on metal. That glass is a matte finish, just like the rest of the flat back glass. This is Gorilla Glass Victus 2, while the front is Gorilla Glass Ceramic 2. The number 2, not also. The phone is 163 grams, which I always enjoy, but I feel like the build and sizing makes it feel heavier than that because getting close to 150 grams feels like nothing to me normally. This is, for now, IP68 dust and water resistant with Bluetooth 5.4 support and Wi-Fi 7, as well as being 5G capable with ultra-wideband support, the latter that the Air does not have. To me, it's weird that the Air gave up so much at that 5.64mm thickness while this is 5.8mm. So a 0.16mm difference. Before I actually did this review, I thought it was something like half a millimeter, and it's not even that close. What was Apple thinking? Well, I know what Samsung was thinking. Do the most you can, and when alone, disappointment. Compared to the competition, this is pretty impressive. Powering the phone is the Snapdragon 8 Elite. Performance-wise, benchmarks are barely 5% worse than what a normal S25 series gives, making this feel like a throttled version of the normal S25s. We get 256 gigabytes of UFS 4.0 storage and 12 gigabytes of RAM stock with the 512 gigabyte option available. Does it get warm? Yes, probably worse than normal phones. Does it ruin the phone? Absolutely not. This phone is not meant for that technically, but it can handle games and apps that you throw at simply because Samsung didn't do what they used to do with the flips and give it an inferior processor because they know that the phone will still warm up. Similar to Apple putting the Pro chip in the Air, it feels like Apple and Samsung said, okay, and deal with the heat, enjoy the performance. To power the phone, we get a massive 3,900 milliamp cell, massive for the thickness, and we get 25 watts of wired and 15 watts of wireless charging, which sounds weak, but with the smaller battery, it kind of works out, just like the battery itself. This battery is 22% smaller than the S25 Ultra, but is the battery life 22% worse? I would say while not perfect, this is a solid phone that doesn't really need to stay on the charger all the time. And if you do end up killing the battery, you'd probably do it on other phones with bigger batteries too. The cameras are strange because the last time we had a Galaxy S phone with 3 cameras total was probably the S10e. The front camera is the same 12 megapixel sensor that we got on the S25 and S25 Ultra, so expect great performance out of this focusable camera. While not perfect, it's pretty good, and the 4K 60 frames per second video is pretty smooth, which would be reasonable for vlogging, just bring a power bank. Then on the rear we have the 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera that is focusable, allowing for macro shots, and also the same sensor as the normal S25. Quality is great, as expected. Well, I guess not because the phone is super thin, but it is pretty solid and complements the main sensor, which is the 200 megapixel camera that is optically stabilized and conveniently the same one that's found in the S25 Ultra. While we do have 50 megapixel and 200 megapixel modes, the default is 12.5 megapixel shots that look great thanks to the pixel binning, but in theory, a 12 megapixel camera would produce a 12.5 megapixel shot at a 4x zoom, but it looks like Samsung only sensor crops at 2x. While the ultra-wide camera can do 4K 60 frames per second video, the main camera can shoot 8K 30 frames per second video, but I'll personally stick to 4K 60 for my videos. As for photos, I don't really want to bore you, so I'll just let you check out the shots that I took. Enjoy. For a phone, it's a great camera set. For a folding or thin phone, the camera set is outstanding. Normally you get some terrible sensors for the thickness, like in flip phones, but the fact that Samsung wanted some thickness for good cameras was the right move. However, I do think the Pixel 1 design would have been a great choice as well. I didn't think I would like this phone. I technically don't. I used the iPhone Air for a couple days and was like, oh yeah, definitely sending this one back. But with the Edge, I kind of don't want to. I will have to send it back because even though $700 is cheap, I can't justify it in my life because I already have some great daily drivers. I also can't really afford it in the first place. I'm also curious to see how the battery holds up in a used 2026 or 2027 model, just like the iPhone Air, because the biggest issue was battery life is going to be horrible. And both of these phones are technically proving that theory wrong, so maybe the same can be said about long-term usage? Probably not. Having a phone this thin becomes pointless with the cameras, but also, what does this even solve? Having a lighter phone is great, but these aren't super light, and these are also big phones. Having a smaller version is probably harder to make, but would be more useful. This is just too big, and I was just using the Razer Plus 2023 and Pixel 9 Pro XL recently, one that's skinny but not too wide, while the other is thick and wide. A folding phone goes from a normalish super thick phone to a small tablet, which I can see how that can be pointless to some, but I feel like it's more of the right direction. A flipping phone and this thin phone feel similar in the sense that they're trying to do the same thing, but in a more difficult way. A flipping phone is trying to be a normal phone, but closes, while a thin phone is a normal phone with some drawbacks. I can see the appeal of having a thin phone like this, but realistically, you're kind of missing out on too much, especially at that normal $1,099 price tag that the phone comes with. That said, I haven't seen this over $1,000 on Amazon, with it going to $700 new at times, and below that if you buy used, making this a decent phone for the price and sacrifices. I will say battery life taking a hit is not that great, but we do have a solid camera, screen, and processor performance, making it really seem like the battery is the only issue, if it even becomes an issue to you. No matter who makes it, you gotta respect that companies try to do stuff like this, or, at least appreciate it. We live in a time where companies don't make risky moves anymore because they have to make money every single time. Sometimes it's dumb, sometimes it works, but hey, at least someone is trying. Keeping the tech world interested and on its toes, and it's nice when companies keep these things interesting and you never really know what's going to be next. I don't think thin phones are here to stay, but it does get people talking and interested in phones, and regardless of who makes it, I think that's a win for all of us. And that's my review of the Samsung S25 Edge, the better thin phone. But what do you think? Should companies abandon this type of design? Let me know what you think, and as always, thanks for being a part of the 1%, and thanks for watching.